Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today, you'll be a gardener trying to grow as many grams of cannabis as possible, which can be used to produce up to 25,000 products from it, such as cosmetics, food crops, fuel, or paper. You'll be creating a garden, growing your seeds into plants and into bigger plants and negatively affecting your opponent's plants. Autofarmer is a competitive card game for 2 to 4 players, plays in 15 to 60 minutes for ages 18 and up, and published by Free Folk Industry. It's on Kickstarter right now, so I'm going to show you how the game works, and I'll see you on the other side. This is a Kickstarter preview, so all the art and components you see here are not final, they're prototype. You're going to want to check the link in the description of this video to see all the final art and components. Now the object of the game is to have the most grams in your garden at the end of the game. Now each player is going to start with a certain amount of cards, some of them seeds, some of them plants, through some randomization process. And at the end of 3 rounds of play, you're going to be seeing how many total grams you have in your garden. You're going to be adding and subtracting, and things are going to be happening. You'll see. Now each game will go through 3 rounds. You have the growth round, then the blooming round, then the harvest round. At the end of this round, you'll see who has the most grams in their garden, and you'll play as many of these games as there are players, and then whoever has the most grams total is the winner. Now this is important because in these rounds are going to be these icons, and you'll see that certain cards that you'll play can only be played in certain rounds or might not be able to be played in other rounds. For example, this raid card can only be played in this final harvest round, but it cannot be played in the blooming or growth round. And so each game starts with that first growth round. Now turns are pretty simple. First, you're going to draw 3 cards from the deck. So you'll be drawing these 3 right into your hand. Now over the course of the game, you're going to be using these little chips to add or subtract certain amounts of values of grams, adding 10 or 20, or subtracting 10 and 20 and things like that. Then after drawing those cards, you're going to secretly look at them and you're going to decide if you want all of them or not. Any of the ones that you don't want, you can discard face up next to the pile, and you can draw that many cards up so you're always having 3 drawn, and you only do this once each round. Next, you'll be playing cards. You can play as many cards as you want. You don't have to play all the cards in your hand. You can keep them for later rounds and later turns. So let's go over what all of these cards do. I'm just going to kind of show you one at a time. Now, when you play them, typically you put these cards in the discard pile, but I'm going to show you them next to it so you can see everything all at once. If you play fertilizer, this here also tells you, put it in the discard pile. So you can either add 20 to one of your plants. So we could do that, and it would just gain 20. So this one's now 60 grams. That's great. So essentially, it's your score. Or you can turn one of your seeds into a plant. Remember, not all your seeds are going to be plants at the beginning, depending on that randomization process. However, if you do this in the last round, which is the harvest round, you end up getting a -20 because it suffers because it doesn't have enough time to really grow. So those are your 2 choices when you use the fertilizer. You could play a burglar card. You just discard it and you simply steal an opponent's plant with all the different chips that are on there. So you're going to get it the exact same weight of grams that's already in that player's garden. Now notice you can only play this in the first 2 rounds. You cannot play it in the harvest round. Now if you play the friend card, again, you discard it and you steal an opponent's plant, just like the burglar does it. But this one can only be done in the last round. The harvest round cannot be done in one of the first 2 rounds. If you play the warning card, you discard it, and only being able to be played in the last round, the harvest round, you essentially destroy an opponent's plant, discarding it and anything that's on it. You could play a sunny card. Again, it's only able to be played in that last round, but all the plants in the game gain 10 grams, and that's great if you have a lot more plants than everybody else. But if you don't, and other players have many more plants than you, on the last round, that harvest round, you might want to play and discard this, and all plants in the game suffer 20, so they lose 20. Now, if ever a plant goes to 0, like if they got a -20 and this was 40, essentially you would just discard this card and put the chips back in their supply piles. That plant essentially has just died. Now, if you play the final solution card, you discard it. It's only being able to be played in the last round, the harvest round, and all your plants gain plus 10 grams. Now these chips are double-sided. Again, you just flip this over, put the plus 10 on the plant of your choice. In this case, it's all your plants. If you play the raid card, it can only be played in the last round, and you discard it, and choose a player that has 5 or more plants in their garden, and their plants are confiscated and removed from the game. So if there's someone growing a huge garden, they can be a target for the raid in the last round. Now let's say somebody else on their turn played a mold card. This has a pot, which means it gets attached to a plant. Let's say they're going to attach it to this one because this one's already up to 60 grams. Now, these mold cards are part of a disease. Now, we told you that you draw cards, you can possibly replace them, then you play some cards. At the end of your turn, you can try to get rid of this mold. Otherwise, the disease will spread. So anytime different diseases are played on your plants from other players, you always have to the end of your turn to remedy them before they begin to spread. And the way you remedy them is on your turn, you can play this spray card, which essentially is killing the disease. This goes in the discard pile, and you can just simply remove that disease card from the plant. Now, another way to get rid of it is you would discard a card on your turn, the sickle, because one of the two things you can do here is destroy one of your plants. Well, why would you want to do that? Because you would destroy this plant and all this, the mold, the card, and the plus 20 chit is gone out of the game. And you do that because if you don't do something to contain this mold, it's going to spread at the end of your turn, which we'll show you in just a moment. The other way to use the sickle card, again, you're discarding it, is to harvest up to 2 healthy plants, meaning those that don't have diseases, or the male card, which we'll go over in just a moment. But you could essentially harvest these, and you'd essentially take the chips for those. So I had a 40, I would take 2 plus 20s, another 40, I'd take another 2 plus 20s. That's going to give me some grams at the end of the game. However, if you sickle these like that and you harvest them too early, meaning in the first 2 rounds, then they get a minus 20. So if I'd done these 2 in the first 2 rounds, essentially, they'd only be worth 20, not 40 each, but it's taking them out of there so that they can't be attacked or stolen from other players. However, if at the end of my turn I was not able to remedy this disease, the disease is going to spread. So what it does is it absolutely kills this plant is gone, and it will attach itself to the next heaviest plant, or the one with the highest points. This one is at 60, it'll attach it here, and now by the end of my next turn, I need to be able to get rid of this, or it's going to destroy this plant and go to the next one. Now, another thing you could do is place mites on somebody else's garden, and that's what this pot shows. And when you place that mite, this plant is immediately going to get minus 20. Now, if you have not gotten rid of these mites, at the end of your turn, it's going to spread by putting minus 20 at the next heaviest healthy plant like this. And it's possible over multiple turns that it will end up killing off one of the other plants. Also, any plant that has mites on it is worth 0 at the end. Now, another way you can be affected is with the male plant. Now, this is really bad if someone plays this on you because at the end of the game, if this is still here, this card is worth nothing, and the rest of your garden is worth half of the stated value. If you play the sickle card, then when you destroy one of your plants, it has to be this one that you destroy. So that's pretty much how the game's played. Over 3 rounds, you're going to be drawing cards, maybe exchanging cards, and then playing cards. And you're going to do that for 3 rounds, and then at the end of the rounds, you're going to count up all of your garden, and then you'll play as many of those games as there are number of players, and whoever has the total grams from all those games is the winner. Now, there's a Strains expansion that adds different and new cards. Now, at the beginning of the game, you'll draw 3 of those new cards. You'll select 2 of them, and you'll replace 2 of the ones that you've set up normally with those. And the cards that have been replaced will go here. Now, all of these cards are feminized, which means no one can place the male card directly on them. However, these will still be affected in half if the male is still in this garden at the end of the game. Now, the different cards have different icons on them. This one is the long flowering plant. Basically, it means that this plant cannot be harvested prematurely. It lasts to the end of the game. Now, the ones with the A are auto flowers. They get harvested automatically after you've completed your turn in the blooming round, which is that second round. However, the disease first do spread in the garden. And some of the cards are disease resistant, which means they cannot be infected by disease or suffer penalties from disease spreading. And here's the rest of the cards from the expansion, but they all do similar things to what I've already mentioned. Well, there you have Autofarmer, and as I showed in the overview, you'll be tactically playing the right cards at the right time to have the most grams in the end. If you'd like to see all the final art and components and all the different pledge levels available, you can click the link below me in the description of this video. It will take you directly to the Kickstarter project page, and I'm sure that free folk industry would love your support.